All right, get comfy, history buffs, because today we are diving into the 9th century. We're talking monks, manuscripts, and, well, you'll see.
This deep dive gets a little strange.
It really does.
Yeah.
So picture this. We're reading this letter from a monk named Ratramnus, and he is seriously puzzled, like really scratching his head over this debate that's been swirling around.
A debate with some rather unusual subject.
We're talking about people with dog heads.
The Cynocephali, to be precise.
Cynocephali, right. These like legendary dog-headed people. And the question that's got Ratramnus all worked up is, are they human? Like, actually human?
It's a question with some serious theological weight to it, especially back then.
Because in the 9th century, your connection to Adam, that was everything. Like, the ultimate proof of humanity.
Well, being descended from Adam meant you were part of God's chosen people. You had a soul. You were destined for salvation.
Exactly. So Ratramnus sets out to solve this riddle. He pores over these ancient texts. He consults eyewitness accounts, people who claimed they'd actually met these Cynocephali.
Some of these accounts are wild, let me tell you.
Oh, totally. We're talking like tales of dog-headed people living in far-off lands, engaging in trade, even waging wars. It's nuts. But here's the thing. Ratramnus takes it all seriously. He's methodical.
He was a scholar, trying to reconcile these fantastic tales with his understanding of faith and reason.
Right. So he starts building his case, and initially he's leaning towards no. Like, these Cynocephali, they can't be human, right?
The physical evidence, at least on the surface, seems pretty damning.
Yeah. I mean, they've got dog heads, for crying out loud. They bark instead of talking.
And Ratramnus compares this to humans, who were created in God's image. Upright posture, the gift of language, reason, all evidence of our unique place in the world.
Oh, and he's also really hung up on this whole looking up thing.
Looking up.
Yeah, like humans, we stand tall, we look up at the heavens, right? It's symbolic of our spiritual nature.
I see.
But dogs, the sniffing the ground, fixated on the earthly realm. So Ratramnus sees this physical difference as a reflection of a deeper spiritual divide.
It's a fascinating example of how much emphasis they placed on physical form. It wasn't just about appearances. It was a window into your very essence.
Totally. But just when you think Ratramnus has made up his mind, plot twist, those eyewitness accounts, they get really, really interesting.
This is where things take an unexpected turn.
Because suddenly these Cynocephali, they're not just barking beasts anymore. These accounts describe them farming, building villages.
Even wearing clothes.
Right. And for Ratramnus, this changes everything.
Because those actions, they suggest something more than mere animal instinct. We're talking about planning, forethought, maybe even a sense of modesty if they're covering themselves with clothing.
And that throws a real wrench in Ratramnus's whole argument, because if these dog-headed beings are capable of that level of sophistication,
Oh.
well, are they really so different from us? It's like, where do you even go from there? You've got these dog-headed farmers strutting around in clothes.
It really challenges the whole humans are superior narrative.
Big time. But just as Ratramnus seems to be coming around to the idea that maybe, just maybe, these Cynocephalis deserve a spot at the humanity table, bam, he throws us another curveball.
St. Christopher.
The big guy himself. And according to legend, wait for it, he was a Cynocephalus, a dog-headed saint. Talk about a theological mind-bender.
It definitely throws a wrench in things. Because if Cynocephales are just beasts, how can one of them become a saint, right? Sainthood implied a soul that was capable of achieving divine grace, not something typically attributed to animals.
So what did Ratramnus do with that? Did he just kind of shrug and say, well, God works mysterious ways?
Not exactly. He tries to square this circle by turning to the writings of a scholar named Isidore of Seville. And let me tell you, this Isidore guy, he was like the walking encyclopedia of his time. Yeah. Wrote about everything under the sun. Literally.
This is the same Isidore who categorized all those monstrous races, right? Including like giants and cyclops and, oh yeah, our dog-headed pals.
The one and only. And here's the thing about Isidore's categorization. He believed that while these unusual beings might be descended from humans, they didn't necessarily inherit all the things that make us human.
Okay, I think I'm following. So just because you're born from humans, that doesn't make you human. Kind of like how I don't know, a cat can have kittens, but those kittens aren't going to magically turn into puppies.
Exactly. And Ratramnus uses a pretty out there example to make this point. He talks about, like, imagine if a woman gave birth to a calf. Obviously, that's not exactly how biology works.
Yeah, think of a stretch.
But he's using it to illustrate that even if something so bizarre were to happen, you wouldn't automatically call that calf human just because it came from a human mother.
Right. He's saying there's more to it than just like who your parents were.
Exactly. It's, I thought, those uniquely human qualities, things like reason and morality and complex thought. And that's what's up for debate with the Cynocephali. Do they have those qualities, or are they just really, really smart animals?
So how does Ratramnus even begin to unpack that? What finally convinces him one way or the other?
Well, he keeps circling back to those descriptions of the Cynocephali's behavior, and there's this one detail in particular that blows his mind.
Okay, lay it on me. What's the Cynocephali's smoking gun? What's got Ratramnus freaking out?
Well, in several of those eyewitness accounts, they describe the Cynocephali domesticating animals. And for Ratramnus, that just does not compute.
Wait, seriously, we're talking like herding sheep, milking cows. I thought this was a deep dive on dog-headed people, not like furry shepherds.
And that's exactly what makes this such a pivotal detail for Ratramnus. Back then, domesticating animals, that was seen as a distinctly human activity.
Right. It takes planning. It takes like an understanding of animal behavior. You're not just like hanging out with the wolves. You're like training them, breeding them.
Precisely. It requires a level of intelligence and control over nature that people in the 9th century just didn't associate with animals.
So not only do we have these dog-headed guys building villages, wearing clothes, but now they're out there wrangling livestock. Ratramnus must have thought he'd fallen into some medieval fever dream.
You can almost picture the gears turning in his head. He's wrestling with these accounts, trying to fit them into his worldview, and ultimately he comes to a pretty bold conclusion.
Don't leave me hanging.
Ratramnus decides that this ability to domesticate animals, combined with all that other evidence of complex behavior, it means the Cynocephali must have rational souls.
So, case closed. Mystery solved. Dog-headed people are officially on Team Human.
Well, Ratramnus definitely seems convinced, but even he admits there's still a lot we don't know about the Cynocephali. He doesn't end his letter with a definitive answer. It's more like, hey, this is what I've gathered. It's pretty wild, but more research is needed.
You know, I kind of respect that. It's like, he's not afraid to say, look, I don't have all the answers, but this is definitely worth exploring further.
And that's something I really appreciate about these old manuscripts. They offer a window into how people wrestled with big questions, even if those questions seem a little out there to us now.
Totally. It makes you wonder, like, what are we taking for granted today that future generations are going to look back on and be like, wait, seriously, they believed that?
Right. And what today might seem like science fiction could be tomorrow's history lesson. That's what makes studying the past so endlessly fascinating, isn't it?
It definitely keeps things interesting. So next time you're feeling like you've got it all figured out, remember Ratramnus and the dog-headed people. The world is a strange and wonderful place, and there's always something new to learn. Thanks for joining us on this deep dive.